Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Bovro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton, and today we have CJ Vogel joining us. He's filling in for
Where
Jerry
are the shades, CJ? Where are the shades, man? Where are the shades?
You gotta get them on, man. But CJ, we're glad you're here because we actually want to talk about the combine a little bit. Obviously, you went up to Indianapolis. You saw it firsthand, and we wanted to get your final thoughts on what you saw.
Yeah, well, I think it was another great marketing opportunity for the University of Texas and Steve Sarkisian's football program. Of course, for the second straight year, Texas was able to boast the fastest wide receiver in the entire combine. And I think, again, when you start to put together some of these most recent Steve Sarkisian combine attendees and their speed numbers together, you're seeing a real trend, a real theme right now when it comes to these guys that are headed off to the NFL. It's really remarkable, right? Of course, Xavier Worthy's 4.21 steals the show, but now Matthew Golden's 4.29. That's the 8th fastest wide receiver 40 time of all time. Texas has 3 of the top 8. How about that when you include Marquise Goodwin as 4.27? So there's a real trend right there. Adonai Mitchell, 4.34. Jaden Blue, Jahdae Barron, all going 4.39. Isaiah Bond as well. So you see it. There's a lot of speed, and it just continues the trend that we're seeing under Steve Sarkisian, and it sets a little bit more of that standard of what we talk about for all these young guys that are just arriving on campus. Hey, this is what's expected, right? I don't know if everybody can. I don't think running 4.3 is an innate thing, but, you got a certain level of standard that you got to live up to when it comes to your production, your development, and where you might end up as an NFL prospect one day. So they certainly set the standard in 2024, and they carried that on again this past weekend in Indianapolis. And I think it's only going to continue to improve as you see these guys and the way that they recruit moving forward. Torrey Becton's doing himself a heck of a job right now.
And so is Steve Sarkisian. So is everybody that's involved in recruiting for Texas. Who would have thought this 4 years ago? I mean, I go back to that all the time where, I mean, they were lucky to get one guy drafted, or, it's just been such a turnaround in such a short period of time. You almost have to pinch yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the reality of it is it wasn't all that long ago where Texas was not where it is today. And it showed itself at the NFL Combine. That's where it showed itself as much as anywhere. No first-round draft picks. Now getting ready to be 3 years in a row where there's a Texas first-round draft pick. No players drafted at all a couple of times in the last 10 years. Now we're talking about double digits. They've done a marvelous job with the program, but what I love what CJ said, and what I kind of got a grin on my face when he started talking about it, is that it sets a standard for the next generation. And that's whether – I don't know if anybody's going to run a 4.3 next year. I doubt it based on who they have coming out next year. I would seriously doubt it, but it puts a standard out there that, hey, we can do this, and if we recruit the right way, we work as hard as Torrey Becton tells us to, we can go do it. And so I'm extremely excited about what this means for Texas. And Jerry, CJ, you used it right. It was a marketing bonanza for Texas. Right. I mean, Saturday was a virtual infomercial for the University of Texas on the NFL Network. It really was. It was that much. And so I'm happy for it and ready to see it kick forward and pay dividends too. So let's see what happens. Congrats to those guys. And let's talk a little about the NFL draft, because I think Blake brought one up that may get people a little perturbed. The NFL or the ESPN draft had 3 Texas guys going in the first round, which is great, right? But are they all in the 20s? Blake, is that the storyline at ESPN?
That is correct. Yeah, so Jordan Reed came out with a 2-round mock draft on ESPN. We'll talk about the first round first. I am going to put the first pick he has is Matthew Golden, going number 21 overall to the Steelers. And then 2 Longhorns get selected back-to-back at 24 and 25. Jahdae Barron going to the Vikings at 24. and Kelvin Banks going to the Texans at 25. But really interested to see that Banks is the last Longhorn taken in the first round.
It is a little surprising, especially after the measurements came in from the combine, in which he had a 7-inch reach longer than Will Campbell, who's kind of been that 1A, 1B kind of comparison so far in NFL drafts at the tackle position. That was a little surprising for all the talk that's been going around about Kelvin Banks and his future, whether it's at guard, whether it's at tackle, whatever. It's going to be at tackle, especially based off some of the conversations I had in Indianapolis. Look, you have a 7-inch longer wingspan than the next best guy in the draft. I think that solidifies your spot. Larger hand as well, larger individual arm. We talk about how broad his shoulders already are. It was a really solid measurement day for Kelvin Banks in Indianapolis as well. I know Texas fans are seeing, that projection right there saying, yes, please, after what that offensive line looked like this past year. But I would be a little surprised if he fell that far to 25. Speaking of which, Jahdae Barron at 24. Bobby, you talked about the marketing ploy it was for Texas to go out there and run super fast and use that as really a large recruiting opportunity for the University of Texas. I don't think anybody won the media aspect of the combine better than Jahdae Barron. I was seeing tweets that Jahdae was going to be the mayor of whatever city he's drafted to. I was seeing tweets that Jahdae has a bright future in commentary and draft analysis when his career is wrapped up. No one commanded the podium better than Jahdae Barron that I was present for, and it just goes on to showcase what he can do, and it's really impressive, his kind of personality and the way that he carries himself. Very mature kid, as we've come to know over the last 4 or 5 years. So Jahdae is going to wow scouts, executives, head coaches. They're going to want him to be a part of their franchise. And look, 24 is a good landing spot for him. Minnesota, that would be a great spot for him. I would be shocked if he fell outside of the top 20.
Yeah, I think that these are interesting numbers. In my opinion, I think that those may be. I think it's definitely too low for Kelvin Banks. We'll see what it says about Barron and Golden, because they had all hovered around that 20 mark. You'd seen some with Barron and Golden a little bit higher, but not much. Hey, we've got a guest coming in here pretty quick, but before we do that, I want to say thank you to our sponsor for this morning, Austin Underground. Rick Vavro and his team have been helping specializing in difficult underground commercial installations since 2004 around the city of Austin. You see all those big buildings going up downtown. A lot of the underground work done by Rick Vavro and his team. Their engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground. He also has a sister company called Texas Road. If you need large road installations done, make sure you reach out to the guys at Texas Road. All right. Hey, Blake, I got a special guest for us here today, Steve Palazzolo. Steve, I hope I did not butcher that last name. It's the first time I've had to say it publicly. He is with it's called the 33rd team. He used to be a senior writer, one of the guys at PFF, Pro Football Focus, which we often quote around here in their rankings and draft grades, what have you. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Palazzolo, yeah, it was close enough. It was good. So
I tried, man. I tried.
I have the same thing with names. First time on air, you never know. But no,
yeah,
I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you for joining us, and appreciate you. Hey, I got to ask you, CJ was up at the combine. I'm sure you were in or around there. What did you think of the Longhorns, first of all, in the showing they made? 14 guys going to the combine.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really good overall. It's one of those where so many guys run fast, and I'm almost like going back and watching, like, did they feel this fast, on film? And they kind of did the last couple of years. Even when Bijan was there a couple of years ago, I was like, man, they've got athletes all over the place. So I think Sark's done a great job, and you just kind of see why they've gone so far these last couple of years. Obviously, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden with good showings running. Even if Bond didn't hit the 4.1, that's okay. I'll talk about Golden in a second because that was interesting to me. I didn't think he felt as fast on film. And I'm not, I understand the audience here and everything. I'm not trying to criticize, but I talked to other people too, where it's like, all right, he felt like a 4.4 guy and he's running 4.29, whereas Isaiah Bond did feel like a 4.2 guy on film and, like a legitimate field stretching threat. So those guys were interesting, I think. And then, Kelvin Banks, I thought, just kind of ticking the arm length box and everything, especially with Will Campbell from LSU not ticking that box, I think helped Banks quite a bit. I thought it was definitely a good showing for the Longhorns.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go through that conversation a little bit more about the wide receiver, Steve. And again, thank you for joining us because I had that same take about a month ago. And when we talked about Isaiah Bond and we talked about Matthew Golden, my whole thing was I like Matthew Golden more as a wide receiver, but when you see wide receivers go in the NFL draft in the first round, especially really early, it's because they have that one freakish trait, right? You could talk all about it. And I know the conversation about hit rates and whatnot is there to be had. But when it comes to spending that first round capital on a wide receiver, you want them to be faster, bigger, stronger than other comparable wide receivers. It didn't feel like to me Golden had that 4.29, 4.3 speed, especially having watched 16 games of him. But does that number now, does it cement him in the first 32 picks?
I think it does. I mean, there's enough people saying, hey, that's the number, right? He's a 4.29 guy. And look, I mean, when you watch him run, I think he was outstanding with his start and right, like technique wise, it was fantastic. And I mean, I used to be a minor league baseball player and I used to train with some of the scouting combine hopefuls, and I would see guys shave like 0.2 off their 40 just from technique from December through February, right? So look, not taking anything away from him, but he did a great job executing and training and getting there. But I think there's two ways of looking at it. When you watch the film, he didn't feel that fast. I didn't think he felt dynamic or special other than very good route runner, right? And so you could use that the other way and say, man, here's this slick route runner who can get in and out of breaks. And then he's got this juice too. And maybe it's new. Maybe it's just straight up speed training. And this is the new Matthew Golden. So I think you could spin this either way. But I think for a wide receiver class that's wide open at the top, you have a Tetairoa McMillan who's got his own speed questions and didn't work out. You have Luther Burden from Missouri, who might be more of a slot and not an outside receiver. I think this opened the door for Golden, and you're already hearing rumblings about being wide receiver one, and there'll be enough teams that see the 4.29 and say, yeah, that's legit. That's what he is. And he's already a pretty good receiver. So, yeah, I think that solidifies him in the first.
Did you do you have a favorite Texas player in this draft? One that you think is maybe underrated, or that maybe you have a little higher than others, or one that you're down on more than others at this point?
Jahdae Barron, man. I mean, Barron it wasn't just me talking about Barron all week. I feel like so many people were talking about him and just loving him as a football player. I mean, everything that he does on film, you love it. And then he goes and runs extremely well. And that was a great box to tick for him. Reminded me a little bit of the discourse around Brian Branch a couple of years ago. I know he's already seen some of those comps. Maybe it was NFL Network that did that. Whereas I remember mocking Brian Branch in the top 10 at that time, just saying, dude, he's a top 10 player in this draft. And he runs in the 4.6s and he drops and the Lions get an absolute steal. Barron ticked the box of the 40. So I think he goes from a guy that was talked about in the late first and now maybe in the top half of the first, he's going to go. Had the shorter arms, and there'll definitely be some teams that like to play more press coverage, and the arm length is an issue when you do want to play a lot of press man. But but most teams aren't playing a ton of press man in today's NFL, right? They're playing off coverage, they're playing a lot of quarters, a lot of zone coverage. Barron's ability to play inside, play outside, and just be an awesome football player while also testing well, I think bodes well. And then you have the other corners in the class, right? When you talk about what draft stock is doing, every other top corner in this class, Will Johnson, Shavon Ravel, Benjamin Morrison, all of those guys had injuries this last year. So Barron, playing out the season, playing great, loved him on film, and then he goes and has a really nice combine. So I think he's going to rise, and I'm not the only one. I think that really likes him.
Yeah, he was a fun listen to at the podium. I was just mentioning that as well. Steve, as a former minor league baseball guy, I'm sure you like watching these guys throw the ball, right? That's kind of more down your alley, I would assume, right? So that's a hot topic with Texas fans is Quinn Ewers. Where's he going? It was a strong combine, at least in my eyes. It felt like he was able to display some of those accuracy traits that he has to his game. What do you think about seeing him in person and, kind of how he fits in this quarterback class?
Yeah, there's a lot of positive buzz from viewers, and I think Sark was doing everything he could to talk him up at the end of the season and then into the offseason. And I thought early in the year when you watched Quinn play, it reminded me a little bit of the Bo Nix trajectory, where you would watch Bo Nix early in his career at Auburn, and then what he did at Oregon. It was like night and day. And I think it wasn't so much night and day with Quinn Ewers, but I thought you were seeing incremental growth, and especially that Michigan game. I mean, I thought, given the how big that game felt at the time, the noon start at Michigan, the defense that Michigan's bringing to the table, I thought that was Quinn's best game. I know the Alabama game a couple of years ago was fantastic, but his ability to maneuver the pocket, the negated touchdown that he had to, just from a scouting perspective, those were all outstanding plays from Quinn Ewers. And I thought that was one of those. And remember, like, Cam Ward wasn't really a thing at the time. We were looking at Shedeur, but like there was no clear QB1. I really thought a lot of evaluators who were seeing that game in person, which is overrated, by the way, but I think, a lot of them were in person, right? I thought a lot of them were going to come out saying this guy's QB1. And then you have the injury and the inconsistency. So I think that works both ways, right? You could say, hey, he's injured. I think the arm was a question at times. The Hail Mary before the half against Ohio State comes to mind, where he's not really to get any juice on it. Some other throws when he's off platform, how much of that's the injury? How much of that is just he's more of a catchable ball type of thrower than, a laser arm type of guy? So I think a lot of those questions are still there. But, I think Sark going to bat for him is going to help. And enough people are going to say, look, his trajectory was improving every single year before he hit the injury. You could also make the case that he's been injured 3 straight years, and that's an issue. That's, a knock against him. But I liked the trajectory, and maybe not in the first round, but, for teams that are QB needy and taking a shot on him, I think he's helping himself quite a bit this offseason here.
You think he's a second, third, fourth round guy? What are you thinking right now on Quinn?
It all depends on the needs, to be honest. It's a unique position, right? So there'll be a few teams that are gonna fill that need in free agency here. They're gonna draft. There'll be 2 probably first rounders, and then guys like Jackson Dart maybe sneak in based off all the rumors. So I would say more like day 2. But if I thought Spencer Rattler was a day 2 guy based off the buzz last year, and he goes in round 5. There were 6 QBs in the top 12, and then Rattler was the next guy in the 5th round. So it depends on teams, appetite for drafting, say, a backup or developmental quarterback, right? So I would say he's a day 2 type of guy, but it really depends on a little supply and demand at the quarterback position.
Steve, tell folks how they can find you. I've got a couple more questions for you, but I want to give you the opportunity because I ran across you and your website. Think it does a terrific job last week, and I was reading through it, and I saw your history with PFF. Tell folks what you do and where they can find you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's all under the 33rd Team banner. My podcast is Check the Mic. My podcast partner, Sam Monson, and we were doing the PFF NFL podcast for over 10 years. We left PFF just before this year, started this Check the Mic podcast under 33rd Team. So it's right here on YouTube. You can go find it, right? Go check the mic, and anywhere you listen to your podcast. That's my full-time gig right now.
That's good. I did the same thing, so it's good. This is all fun. Hey, I've got another question for you. Gunnar Helm, tight end from Texas, runs a 4.9 for first 40-yard dash, then comes back and runs a 4.8, and then does the drills. And everybody's like down. I mean, USA Today had a national story about he's one of the losers of the combine. Let me show you this picture that they put out yesterday. Ian Rappaport, one of the notable NFL reporters. Gunnar Helm false started on his first 40-yard dash and ripped his ankle. And then went ahead and worked out. What is a pro team, as a guy that has talked to those guys, what do they make of something like that where a guy runs abnormally slow for what he is, but then they find out afterwards he's ripped his ankle? I mean, how do you even handle that if you're a pro team and a scouting director?
I kind of agree with the chat. He shouldn't have run. I mean, because look, there's enough people that look at the number and say, well, he's a 4.9 guy. That's what he is. And then until that context comes out, then it's like, all right, okay. So it is good to get the context out there. Sometimes a guy like Ian Rappaport might only report something, say, from an agent, where the agent says, oh, we had a tweaked hamstring, we had this and that. The pictures tell the story here, though, for Gunnar Helm, right? So that's good. At least we have the pictures. So hopefully he can recover, run at pro day. And if he can do that, they'll take his best time, right? So at the end of the day, if he can at least come back, do a pro day, do a private workout, do something before April 24th, they'll get that on the record, and that, it'll essentially scrub the 4.9. It's like, SATs or whatever. We'll take your best one. So that's the biggest thing for Gunnar. I'm guilty as well, sometimes putting out the winners and losers articles, and there's always more context needed. And loser doesn't mean you're a loser, you're not good, but it does mean perception changed, right? And there could be some people where perception changed, but at least you got the evidence out there. We got a bad ankle, so that there's reasons why those numbers were so low.
I asked you early on, Steve, like who's your Texas player that you've got marked that you think is better than maybe a lot of people did, either early or now or what have you. Mine is Andrew Makuba in this draft. I think even though he's going to go third round, and I know he's smallish for a safety, I think he's a terrific, heady football player with a lot of experience playing under two different schemes, first at Clemson, now at Texas, different positions, very versatile and productive. What's the NFL take on Makuba? Because I literally believe at the end of the year, he was one of the team's top 3 or 4 players. I thought he was that good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he made a ton of plays this year. He was all over the place. I think Makuba, I like him quite a bit. I've got my own, secret analysis that I try to give to some NFL teams and player eval and everything. Let me just, exclusive here. I've got him high on my list. So it doesn't mean, hey, take him in the first round. It just means when he's available, he's one of those players that you would keep an eye on. So that's taken his entire career into account. Safety class generally, I think, is interesting. I think there's some depth there, but the safety position in the NFL has been a little quirky the last couple of years, where the NFL doesn't want to pay them. There's plenty of veterans available, and then the draft capital hasn't been used. Hasn't been that high as far as using them. But safety's a safe position, right? So you have a guy like Nicky Manwari who has that incredible workout. That was outstanding, and he's already a good football player. But I would say that elite athleticism matters a little bit less at that position, maybe, than some others, where it's all about being in the right place at the right time. And Makuba's always shown that, I think, throughout his career. The other guy I just want to throw in there too that I really like is Jaden Blue. I mean, the fact that he ran so fast helps, but I know there are some teams that need a pass game threat out of the backfield, and some of the mismatches he's able to create on wheel routes, the Texas route, the option routes, and his one cut style and big play ability. I don't think he's certainly not as powerful as some other runners in this class, but I love him as a pass game weapon. I think somebody deep running back class, but if you have a specific role for him, I think you can, get a lot of production out of him.
We call him we call him a boutique player, because 100%. That's really what you're not going to line him up and run him 25 times or even 20 in the NFL. He doesn't break any tackles. But the stat that keeps coming to mind with Jaden Blue, he scored 14 touchdowns. And it's not like he was the goal line back. You know what I mean? It's like that's a lot of touchdowns from wherever you're at. CJ, you had something?
Yeah, Steve, it was a fun conversation I was having with most of the Texas players, just kind of, have them call their shots for guys down the road. I don't know if you've seen a lot of guys that have caught your interest when watching film on these current guys, but are there any Texas players coming back for 2025 that you kind of have already circled and said, oh, they're going to be fun film watches for future draft scouting?
I'm not going to lie. I'm so locked into this class, and I haven't caught up on all the player movement just yet. So I don't catch up on the portal movement and everything until a little bit later. So I don't know offhand right away, but I do really like this class, and I think it'll be a banner class this year, at least for the Longhorns.
Steve, thank you. And I know you got your own show to prepare for. We appreciate you stopping by on Texas Football, Coffee and Football this morning as well.
Yeah, I'll do it anytime, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Hey, you got to do this. Hook them, man. Say hook them.
Hook them. There you go. I'll wear my. I got gifted a Texas shirt a couple years ago. I'll play the game next time.
Have a good one, buddy. Good luck with everything you got going on. Appreciate it very much. Good guest, former PFF guy. I read some of this stuff back in the day, CJ, and I know you read a lot of that, right? Yeah. And I knew he had started his own thing, and so good stuff. He's a good guy. Seems like he knows his stuff as well. So I hope you guys out there enjoyed that. CJ, you mentioned that the next group, that's something that you're focused on, and we talked a little bit about it. Anthony Jeez, I'm forgetting his name right now. The linebacker at Texas, Anthony Hill. I can't even. He's one, and then we also have. Do you think DeAndre Moore comes out next year? That was one that I came up with. Like, who are the guys that could come out that might, but probably would be better off doing another year? Is DeAndre Moore one of those guys? Is Trey Wisner one of those guys potentially? Anybody? Trevor Gooseby would be in that category, perhaps. Would he try to do something similar to what Cam Williams did and leave after 1 year? What do you think?
Yeah, I think off of that group, especially Trevor Gooseby comes to mind. DeAndre Moore was a name that I heard from Texas players several times, and that's even on the defensive side of the ball. You know, they said his work ethic, his, kind of drive to be the first to the field is something that's going to help him. And Bobby, we covered that pretty extensively during spring practice when we were out there waiting for our availabilities, and it was the only person on the field was DeAndre Moore, catching passes from the jugs machine, beating just about every coach and player to the field at the time. That's translated to success on the field early on, especially in a year where he was kind of the forgotten guy coming into the year. So certainly in that conversation for D Moore as well. One other name, Manny Muhammad, I think, is going to be in that conversation, right? And, I heard Jahdae Barron talk about him. I asked him specifically. I was like, what do you think about Manny Muhammad, that cornerback room? I said, look, Manny's a student of the game. He knows just as much route concepts. He knows everything about, man schemes, zone schemes. He could tell you exactly what's going to happen according to alignment. He's just got to put together the playmaking, right? And we've talked about that. Jahdae going from a guy at the nickel spot with a pick or two to the Thorpe Award winner with several passes defended and 5 picks. You got to put that tape out there. He says right now, Manny Muhammad's going to be his guy to take that leap as well. So I'm excited for those guys specifically, but some of those other names that we mentioned, obviously Ryan Wingo, Colin Simmons, heard a lot about them from the current players departing as well. I can't think if there's anyone specifically that kind of surprised me, but I have to imagine Trey Wisner's in this conversation. If we've learned anything about who he is as a player and as he is as a person, that's going to be a guy that's going to be hard to keep off the field regardless of who's healthy in that room.
All right, guys, before we move on here, we need to do a couple of ad reads. Bobby, I'm going to let you start with Bluebird Organizing.
Yeah, let's face it, life can be messy. Moving, divorce, having kids, downsizing after the kids have left, losing a loved one, that's a tough one. Everybody, life's transitions can cause clutter to pile up and chaos to enter our minds and spaces. Through professional organizing, Bluebird Organizing helps you end that feeling of being overwhelmed and make your space work for where you are today so you can step into your next chapter with clarity and calm. If the thought of having someone come look at your personal space just feels like too much, Bluebird Organizing understands it's no small task, no small ask to let a stranger come into your home. But with Bluebird Organizing, there's no judgment, only efficient plans that can make life's processes, like helping a loved one move into senior living, have dealt with that, flow with ease. Call or text 737-346-7779 to book your free in-person consultation today. Again, get help if you need it. 737-346-7779. Check out Perry Ricard and Bluebird Organizing.
Thank you for that, Bobby. And I'm also going to tell everyone about Gooder. And we've all heard Jerry tell you how it doesn't get better than Gooder. And I'm with him on that one. Gooder offers the best stylish sunglasses starting at only $25 a pair. With a ton of different styles to choose from, including vibrant colors, or maybe you like a more sleek look, Gooder has you covered. There's a pair of Gooders for you, no matter what your personality or your style may be. They're lightweight, they're comfortable. Most importantly, to me anyway, they're 100% polarized. Gooder's glasses are designed for anything, whether that's everyday wear, being on the go, maybe working out, whatever you do. They don't slip, they don't bounce. So for all the active people out there that love to run or play tennis or baseball or whatever it may be, Gooder has you covered. The best part is they're affordable. Starting at $25 a pair, you don't have to worry about breaking them or scratching them or losing them. And for $25, you can pretty much have a pair for every single occasion. So if you need a new pair of sunnies, Gooder is giving OTF listeners free shipping, excuse me. You can go to gooder.com/ontexas and use code ONTEXAS for free shipping. Of course, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. You don't need it, which you don't even need to worry about. Like I said, 100% satisfaction guarantee. You will be satisfied. Again, that's gooder.com/ontexas. Use code ONTEXAS for free shipping. I want to thank them for sponsoring. Okay, guys, we were talking about the draft earlier from ESPN. We saw Matthew Golden is what they're projecting to the Steelers, but then they project the Steelers to take another Longhorn, Alfred Collins at 52. And then the other one that they had was Andrew Makuba going to the Buffalo Bills at 62. So 5 Longhorns in the first 2 rounds, according to ESPN's Jordan Reed.
Man, I was happy to hear Steve talk about Andrew Makuba, CJ, because I really do think that he solidified that secondary. Texas knew what they had with Michael Taft, with Jahdae Barron. Andrew Makuba was that extra piece that I think really made that secondary as good as it was. He was the piece of the puzzle that just he changed the dynamic back there by being so darn good and reliable. And making some heads-up plays. That interception against Georgia, where he turned and ran, I don't know of another safety in the country that makes that play.
And he did it twice in that year, Bobby.
I know. That's what I'm saying, though. What other safety in the country makes that play in college football? I don't know. I literally don't know if anybody else does. So I'm happy for him.
I am too. And again, going back to the combine, I know it's a lot about the measurables and stuff like that. I was surprised to see him weigh in at 186 pounds. I'm sitting there kind of thinking, if you got him up to 195 or, pushing 200, I don't know if he loses any mobility or speed or whatnot, but some of those hits that he's laying, I'd probably end up with a couple kids in the hospital if he was packing 200 pounds. But that was really impressive to me was this past year. Seeing him play at the size that he was at, yet having hits like he did against Texas A&M on the 3rd and 2, the hit on the goal line against Georgia in the SEC championship game. I mean, those are hits that, we revere players for, right? The Cam Chancellors of the game, the Sean Taylors. Now, of course, he's got to go to do that at the NFL level against bigger, faster, stronger players, but it was really surprising and really just kind of spoke to who he is as a football player, fearless football player about his own safety, right? To go out there and hit guys like that at 186 pounds. That is rather remarkable. One of my biggest takeaways from Indianapolis.
All right, guys, we got a couple of super chats here. This one from Brandon Hugh is actually for Steve, but he said to ask y'all instead, any thoughts on Silas Bolden when it comes to the draft?
Man, I don't think he's getting drafted. What, CJ, you had something else to add?
I think I agree with you, Bobby. Yeah. I agree with you, Bobby. I spoke with Matthew Golden in Indianapolis about who to watch at the Pro Day, and he said, without a doubt, Silas Bolden is a guy. And as we continue to talk about the Texas speed, you could probably mark him down as a guy that might touch that 4.3 level. Of course, it's not the combine, so it's not going to be something that Texas promotes or you see promoted on the national media. But this is certainly someone that has that quick, really, really electric one cut and go. I think the 3-cone drill, the 20-yard shuttle, some of these off to the side drills that you see at these pro days and combines, they're going to put him on NFL radars. Again, the size won't help him a whole lot, but he's going to be a guy that finds a camp and what can he do from there. We've seen we've seen the highs and the lows of some of those kickoff and punt returns, Bobby. So, that's going to help him as well, but he's going to have to touch the 4 threes in my eyes to really make a big splash at the Pro Day, which is March 26th, by the way.
I think he's Kavontae Turpin-ish. Turpin was not drafted, toiled around a little bit in different leagues trying to get his shot and find his place. Keelan Robinson is bigger than Silas Bolden. And I know that sounds crazy, but he is. I think he's gonna find a home in the Canadian League if he wants one, for sure. Hey, some other news. Happy Mardi Gras to everyone today, by the way, especially if you're down in New Orleans and celebrating. Don't be safe down there for sure. Having endured Mardi Gras myself one time as a young person, be safe down there. Also, we forgot to mention out of the gate, Neil Brown, the former West Virginia head coach, will be taking a role on the University of Texas staff. I hesitate to talk about what role he will take because I was not told what role he would take. This is a guy that has been a head coach, I think, 6 years at West Virginia. Prior to that, he was 4 years at Troy. He was the offensive coordinator at Texas Tech. I think he's going to spend a year with the University of Texas, either in an offensive analyst role, a special assistant to the head coach. I mean, this is a guy that could work on red zone type stuff. One of the things that Neil Brown is really, really good at from an offensive perspective is getting the ball to the running backs in the passing game. And so that could be one of the reasons why Sark is very interested there. Of course, he worked with Chad Scott for 6 years at West Virginia. Scott was his running backs coach. So news there dropping, Texas adding Neil Brown, the former West Virginia coach, to a support role for the university. He won't be there day to day trying to figure everything out, but he'll be one of those guys that Sark likes to have around the program, somebody to lean on in times of interest or desire.
Hey, Bobby, I know we've talked about this previously, especially with, start bringing on Paul Chryst as a guy that could bring ideas to the run game. Is that something you see Neil Brown doing as well? And I asked that because we've talked about Chad Scott and his hiring previously. Chad Scott was the offensive coordinator, but it was Neil Brown calling the plays the last 2 years. West Virginia had the 8th most and 13th most rush attempts per game in those 2 years. Obviously, C.J. Donaldson leading the charge there, but Jaheim White, another guy, a really electric change of pace back that West Virginia had as well. What's something that you hope is brought to this room, or maybe something that you look at and say, okay, I could see why this was an addition to the staff in the sense that Texas has to get better in X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, he was. So that's a great question. Those numbers that you just quoted are a bit skewed because they also had a running quarterback, guy that didn't mind. He would call runs for him,
sure.
And then he would scramble quite a bit, and that would be some of their most effective plays. Neil Brown is known as a guy that can get his running backs into space in the passing game. That was one of the very first things he did at Tech, and what they were able to do. And so that plus, to your point, maybe some red zone stuff. Maybe he's got some red zone ideas that Sark can use from what you usually give these guys, like a Neil Brown or a Gary Patterson, for example, that was with Texas. Very similar role. How you give them one special project. You don't give them, the whole team and say, "What do you think?" Steve Sarkisian is not really. He knows his team better than anybody, but you give him one special project, almost like a consultant, right? And see what they come up with and come back with. I don't know what Sark's going to ask him, though. To your point, CJ, could be run game, could be passing game to the running backs, because I do think that some of what Sark's doing right now is now on tape. Those wheel routes are on tape. The rail routes are on tape. The Sark screen is on tape. Right. So how do you introduce new ways to get the balls to the running back out of the backfield? That's because people are catching up with the Sark screen. Not always, but they are. And so maybe he adds a wrinkle or two there this offseason.
I agree.
All right, some more super chats this morning. This one here from Trace Little. Thank you, Trace, as always. If Coach would have put me in, we would have won state. Good morning, Horns fans. Good morning to you, Trace. Appreciate the super chat.
I agree, Trace.
Then Juan Garza. Juan asked, what do y'all think about Grant McCaslin, the Texas Tech head basketball coach? It would be funny if Texas pulled him from Tech again.
The word is... Jerry's talking about this, CJ. I'll let you know. Jerry was talking about this the other day. The word on the street was that Scott Drew, if he left Baylor to go to Indiana, for example, that McCaslin would be next in line at Baylor, and Baylor was going to be very interested in him. Should Texas be interested in him? I don't know. I mean, look, and I do think Texas and CDC used a lot of political capital in the state government when they took Jim Schlossnagle away from A&M. I don't know if he wants to bark up that tree again so soon, but he's obviously doing a good job at Tech. So we'll see where that goes, and if it goes. Texas plays basketball tonight at Mississippi State in Starkville, 7:00 tip off. Longhorns, suffice to say, a must-win game for them. Right now, they're on the outside looking in my opinion, of the NCAA tournament, and that's not where Rodney Terry needs to be to keep his job. Frankly, they got 2 regular season games left. OU ends the season in Moody on the 8th. They've got Mississippi State tonight in Starkville.
I don't know if Baylor's a better spot than Texas Tech in basketball these days, but I look at it for the sense of heck of a coach. To your point, Bobby, that's a hairy mess for CDC to want to go down again.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, look, there is some political capital there, right? You only want to knock on that door when you absolutely have to. Bloss looks like he's probably worth it. I don't know if Grant McCaslin is worth it if there's other big name guys out there as well. I mean, Schlossnagle was as big a name in college coaching that you could get for college baseball, in my opinion. Is Grant McCaslin the biggest name you could get in college basketball? Probably not. Probably not.
Hey, and speaking of basketball, guys, we got to give some congratulations here because it came out yesterday that our good buddy Vic Schaefer was named the SEC Coach of the Year, but it didn't stop there. He was also named the USA Today Sports Coach of the Year, so congratulations to Vic. And then Madison Booker was named All SEC First Team. Now, Texas will play. Let me make sure I have this correct here. Looks like they're going to play Friday, 7:00 our time or Central Time, against the winner of Ole Miss and either Missouri, Mississippi State. So we'll see what happens. But Friday, 7 p.m. Central is when we'll see the Texas women take the court again.
That is odd that they have
Texas A&M up there.
What's that? 16.
16?
Hey, did y'all see the stat yesterday? I thought this was cool. Number of SEC championships by school at this point.
No.
That have been decided, whether it's football, volleyball, Texas has won 4 SEC championships. Next highest team was 2.
Wow.
Welcome to the SEC. There's a new sheriff in town.
Not SEC ready.
So four SEC championships for the Longhorns. Next highest to this point is 2 by any school.
Man.
So there you go. Pretty good athletic program, Mr. Del Conte.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Drew Lockhart, I see your super chat. I saw it was intended for Jerry with some basketball talk. I saved it, so if you want us to wait and save it for Jerry tomorrow or later today, just let us know. If not, we can revisit that. And then Alfie Obeezy, happy 12th birthday to his daughter, Sophia. Got to tell her happy birthday. So that's awesome there. All right, well, we got more questions here this morning, fellas, so let's just jump right into those. We've been talking about the draft, the combine. Jack wants to know, what are the opportunities for Norton and Lele?
Yeah, I actually chatted with Bill Norton a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, there's that kind of moment in time where it might have appeared that he was going to come back to school. Obviously, he's out of eligibility, but I chatted with him. Look, he's training on his own. He's working out, preparing for whatever pro day or draft opportunities will be available to him. So he's right there putting in the work on the outside. And same for Jermaine Lole as well. Interestingly enough, I one of the conversations that I had with, I believe, Alfred Collins this past week, and we asked him who the fastest on the team was and who the strongest on the team was. He said Jermaine Lole was right there with Kelvin Banks for the overall strongest player on the 2024 Texas program. I was pretty surprised by that, but I think that if he's able to go out and put up a big number on the bench, look, finding those run-stopping defensive tackles is always a premium in the NFL for both of these guys. If you're able to go out there and at least get on the radar, I would expect both to be invited to at least one team or multiple camps, as the NFL season prepares for this upcoming year.
All right, we're going to switch some gears, talk a little recruiting. Jerry posted this morning over on ontextfootball.com. Some more official visits have been set. And we're going to start here.
Yeah,
Cameron.
this is actually, let's start with Cameron Hamill. He's actually out of Goodyear, Arizona, a little suburb kind of Phoenix, Desert Edge High School. He's the newest offer for Mark Orfe at corner. And there could be some interest here from Texas. Obviously, Arizona has been very kind to Texas the last several years. Bijan Robinson, chief among them there. But he is a guy that is 6 foot 175, has 30 plus offers around the country. He's ranked roughly around the 15th or 16th best cornerback in the country. But Texas has a little bit of an in there in the city of Phoenix. Jeff Banks has recruited that area for decades. Orfe reaching out and extending an offer yesterday to this young man as we watch him on film. He can fill, he runs well, etc. I guess is the way to put it. Well, another thing that needs to be mentioned, Xavier Crowell, the running back that we've been talking about so much out of Jackson, Alabama, has set up his official or an unofficial visit as well as an official visit to the University of Texas. So we all know he's coming in mid-June. He's actually coming earlier than that, March 25th through 27th, just to come hang out, meet the coaches, get to know Chad Scott, Steve Sarkisian, AJ Milwee, that group, Kyle Flood on offense. I think that's really important because getting someone as good as him on the campus twice in a 2-month period, to me, that tells me Texas thinks they might have a real shot at landing him. And it shows a genuine interest. Again, that's Xavier Crowell. Also lining up another unofficial visit is Trenton Henderson, a big defensive lineman. He is expected to be in mid-April, late April. The two things that I would say that I wanted to go over in this recruiting piece, guys, is that Texas is having two big unofficial visit weekends in March, one in March, the 25th through the 27th, and then one in April 12th. They're both going to be around quote unquote quasi scrimmages from spring practice. So those players will be seeing not only a scrimmage, not only practice and what it's like during a game or what it's like being in Austin. They'll also see some guys knocking pads a little bit in scrimmages, etc. So they're going to have 2 unofficial visit weekends along with the 3 official visit weekends. Xavier Crowell, one of those guys that's coming in. Trenton Henderson coming in as well. What do you think of Trenton Henderson here, CJ? You like him?
My goodness, he's violent, Bobby. Yeah, he gets around that edge quick.
Long arms.
Yeah, big fan of his.
Yeah, big time player. But long story short, Texas got a bunch of stuff lined up right now. And you know, I was talking to someone yesterday about Texas recruiting. They're not looking for commitments right now. They like taking a couple in the summertime, kind of getting up in that 10 range, and then finishing it out late in the season. Because, I mean, Texas is very, very confident in the way they recruit. And one of the things that is obvious, they'd rather get a commitment late than a commitment early. A commitment late means a lot more because it means you're probably going to get them. Getting a commitment early, nowadays you're about a 50-50 chance of that commit staying. So that's what Texas has been focused on. Plus they get a longer look at them. Man, Trenton Henderson can go, dude.
Yeah.
That dude can go.
And that's what makes those spring unofficial visits so important too, Bobby. I mean, Texas wasn't in it for Jamie French this time last year. Josiah Sharma came in by himself late March. You know, that's really where you start to see the ball start to move for a lot of these guys, especially on the out-of-state front. Henderson fits the bill there.
Yep.
Okay, guys, let's get back to some more questions that we have. And while we're on recruiting, we actually have a recruiting question from Eli. Jamarian Vincent out of Waco and Jason Bradford out of Temple. Did Texas offer?
Texas liked Jamarian Vincent. He actually committed pretty early, like I think surprisingly early, to Baylor out of the fold there. I know Jason Bradford, he's a bigger body, about 6'2.5". cornerback out of Temple, same team as Jamarian Carlton, the defensive end that Texas is after. Look, Jason Bradford didn't hear from Texas too often, right? He was a guy that came down and camped multiple times in Austin. I think that there just wasn't much interest on the Terry Joseph front. Does that change with Mark Orfe? We'll see. But right now, normally you see a lot of agreement upon the defensive staff when it comes to PK or Johnny Nansen and the rest of that group on who they pursue. Bradford, a little thicker. I think he might have a brighter future at safety, but a heck of a football player, moves very well. He's in that same training group as Andrew Makuba, Jade Barron, Michael Taft with Band Performance down out of Austin. So we'll see what his developmental curve looks like, but so far no interest on the front of Jason Bradford.
They are, but Jamarian Carlton is it's confusing. Vincent's the DB out of Waco Conley that's committed to Baylor. Jamarian Vincent. Then there's a Jamarian Carlton, a defensive end out of Temple that Texas is recruiting, and a Jason Bradford, a defensive back out of Temple, Texas, is I don't want to say lukewarm, but not recruiting hard right now. At least it looks like from the surface.
Okay, our next question here comes from Kyle. He says, I've heard a lot about C.J. Baxter's recovery, but what about Derek Williams? Will he be ready for fall camp?
That's it. That's the hope right now. Of course, it's about a 9-month recovery from the time of the injury. Was it early October is when that injury occurred against Oklahoma? That would put him on path to be on the field, or at least close to on the field towards the end of summer conditioning, getting back into the pads. Of course, Texas is going to be pretty cautious with Derek Williams, as he is expected to be a big part of the future of that secondary. But right now, what I'm hearing is that he's starting to move a little bit behind the scenes. He's starting to get back into the activities again, very lightly. So don't go out there saying that we said that he's back 100%. That's not the case. But he is starting to get back active in some of these workouts on the side, starting to test himself a little bit more with that knee.
And on a very related note, guys, Dylan wants to know what we think about Cedric Baxter and Christian Clark.
Well, I mean, you have the picture, right, Blake? Are you going to show that to us? The weightlifting picture from Christian Clark yesterday.
Let me grab that real quick.
This was encouraging. It was within our group chat that we were talking about this. Christian Clark's putting up some weight right now in the weight room. Look at this, guys. Not bad putting up that much weight in a squat if you just tore an Achilles.
Right.
I'll just put it that way. So I think he's well on his way to returning. Good stuff there. Jarrett Gibson there in the background looking stout as well. But isn't that a good sign, in y'all's opinion, for Christian Clark?
Yeah, I would say front squatting 275 is a pretty good sign for anybody. But off of an Achilles alone, 100%, Bobby. Again, that's a scary injury for a lot of young cats, especially at the running back position. So to see this is kind of where he's at in March when that injury occurred in August, that's a heck of a sign.
No doubt about it. All right, our next question here comes from King Me. King Me asks, who do we expect and not expect to participate in Texas Pro Day?
Man, it's going to be the 26th of March, first of all. The 25th starts practice. They'll have Pro Day the 26th of this month. I worry that Gunnar Helm's not going to be ready for that. That's a tear of a major ligament, and even 3 weeks may not be enough. CJ and Blake, in my opinion. The question is whether or not we were asked this on the message board yesterday on Texas Football. Will Quinn Ewers throw at Pro Day? If I'm Quinn Ewers, I would take every opportunity to throw at Pro Day, because that's where you look like $1 million, man.
Yep.
But we haven't heard yet whether he's going to do that. Typically they do. Typically quarterbacks will throw because it's their ecosystem that they're involved in. It makes them look better. They've got their receivers there. It could be that every single one of them participates, and I'll say this, but they participate selectively. Like Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat last year. CJ, you were there. Me and Jerry were there also. Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy were going to go early in the draft regardless. They participated in like 2 or 3 drills, and there were no timing of it. It was going through drills with tackle dummies, and that kind of stuff, just so people could see them. And now Xavier Worthen and Adonai Mitchell, all they did was run routes for Quinn Ewers last year. Same with Jordan Whittington, right? JT Sanders, those guys. So it all depends. I think all of them will do something. The question is the amount of what they do.
On the Gunnar Helm front, Texas did this last year with Whittington, who I believe was dealing with a hamstring at the time. He was not able to participate in Indianapolis, and I think was limited quite a bit in that pro day as well. He obviously didn't do any of the testing, but he did run some routes, if I remember correctly. They had a second pro day, well, I believe like the first week of May, like really late, really close to that NFL draft time. So I guess it would have been in early or late April, depending on the draft time. But I would expect that to be the case for Gunnar Helm if he's unable to go in 3 weeks at the Texas Pro Day, just to get those times out once again, because that's a big number to not be sure of on the 40, on the the explosive numbers as well with the jump abroad as well. So I would expect there to be a second pro day possible. And that's where, again, you'll see a second timing for Silas Bolden or Bill Norton or some of these guys who are looking for an extra opportunity to get a number or 2 out in front of some of these draft scouts.
All right. Next here, I'm going to tell everyone out there about the good folks at Public Rec. And nobody's got time for stiff, uncomfortable clothes anymore. It's just about springtime here in Texas, and you deserve to be comfortable in whatever you're wearing, no matter what you're doing. And that's where Public Rec comes in. Their pants are an absolute game changer. They're designed to be as comfy as your favorite sweats, but way more stylish. We're talking super soft fabric, no stiff seams, enough stretch to keep up with whatever your day may throw at you. But Public Rec isn't just about pants. They have so many great style options, whether you're working all day in the office, running errands, or maybe just going out to get a drink or a bite to eat. And who doesn't want to look sharp without sacrificing comfort? They have a huge selection of high-quality, everyday premium styles. You can revamp your entire wardrobe with their perfect fitting polos, shorts, and hoodies. And, of course, don't forget those pants. So treat yourself right, because comfort is always in season. Upgrade to Public Rec and feel the difference. For a limited time, you can get 20% off at Public Rec by using code ONTexas at checkout. Just head to publicrec.com, use promo code ONTexas, and you're all set. And when they ask how you found them, be sure to mention our show. It really helps us out, and we would really appreciate it. Find your perfect fit, never compromise on comfort again, and that's Public Rec, where comfort rules. And Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground one last time.
Yeah, absolutely. Since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult commercial underground installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. Most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time for you and yours. That's Austin Underground. I also want to mention Rick has a new venture going on called the Lone Star Bar out in Jonestown, Texas. If you're out by the lake and want to stop by for a free pop, he's got Flight by Yingling and all kinds of other stuff out there. Again, that's Lone Star Bar. Rick Vavro, a Longhorn guy through and through. I think he's got 3 degrees from the University of Texas in engineering. Rick also big fan of not only football, basketball, volleyball. I met him at a volleyball match way back in the day. So Rick and his team, big Longhorn fans. Austin Underground, Lone Star Bar, as well as Texas Road, his 3 companies.
Thank you for that, Bobby. And we got time for a few more questions here. Victor wants to know, are we in the race for Jalen Lott from Frisco?
Oh, yeah. A big priority for Texas as well. Jalen is the son of James Lott, who played at Texas, I believe in the early 80s. I think he's either in the Texas High School Sports Hall of Fame, or I can't remember all of James. He high jumped. James Lott high jumped in high school over 7 foot. Okay, then he went to play at Texas. Played I think a year or 2 in the NFL. He is Jalen is a cornerback / wide receiver at Panther Creek, one of the new schools up in Frisco, or one of the many new schools up in Frisco, as that area, the state absolutely explodes. But my point being with this is he's not just one of the guys that Texas is recruiting. He is a priority. He may be as good a cornerback as there is in the country. Now, he could be recruited as a wide receiver if he wanted to be too. But I think that kind of like Travis Hunter, and I don't want to put that on him. He's not Travis Hunter. I'm not trying to say that. Probably worth more money long-term to be a great corner.
And then our next question here comes from Victor once again. And he says, what about Booby Feaster? Any news there, CJ?
Yeah, I know that's one Texas has been mentioned about pretty often. Look, so far, no official visits set. I know they reclassified from 27 to 26, so that timeline sped up quite a bit. Texas, again, after the Naeem Burrows, the Tristan Keys of the world right now. We'll see if an official or one of those spring unofficials are set with Booby Feaster. Right now, with the reclassification, I think that he's just a little bit lower on that board in terms of where you see some of these guys that have been dead set on the 26 class from the very get-go. It's not to say that can't change with future evaluations or if they get them on the campus and like what they see. But right now, based off what I'm hearing from the Dallas area, Texas not in contact as often as some of these other programs who have already gone ahead and set official visits with him.
Don't forget about Caden Finley, Jermichael Finley's son at Aledo in there from a in-state angle, CJ.
Yep.
And we will close with this question here from Frank. Frank asks, who's the Longhorn that was not invited to the combine this year is what he means, who has the best chance of making an NFL roster?
That's a great question.
I would go. Oh, go ahead. Go for it, CJ. Sorry.
I would say Jermaine Lole. And I say that again, kind of just building off of what we saw from him, a guy that was able to play 3 downs. He didn't do it too often, obviously, because of Broughton and Collins. But to hear that from Alfred Collins, to say he's the strongest guy on the team in that interior with a lot of college football played already, I think that's something that might pique the interest of some of those undrafted, scouts, if you will. So I like Lole if he can stay healthy. Of course, that's the big caveat with his entire game.
Yeah, I agree. So CJ's made it just a great point. He's had shoulder issues. He's had multiple issues throughout his career. But if he can just get in a camp and then figure it out from there, the guy that I was going to go with, and I think Chris Weatherford also mentioned David Benda, because I think David Benda might be able to be a special teams guy. It's not necessarily that I think he's going to be a first team linebacker or make it, but he could be theoretically a really, really good special teams guy because he runs really well, CJ. What did he run, 100 meter in high school, something like that? So he may run well enough to be a really good special teams guy, even though he didn't play much of it in college. Frankly, we'll see what that means.
And Eli, we got one more. It's a super chat here from Jeff Carey. Thank you, Jeff. He says, how much did Barron and Golden rise in the draft projections in the last year? I'd say a lot.
Yeah. What was it? CJ, you follow the draft closer than I do, I think, historically. Barron was thought to be a 3rd or 4th rounder if he came out last year, if I'm not mistaken. Golden wasn't mentioned in the top 3 rounds. I mean, I saw no top 100 picks. I mean, Isaiah Bond was all the rage when he there were people that had Isaiah Bond in the top 10 in the NFL draft last year in off season. So, Jeff, that tells you, but 3rd or 4th round and outside the 3rd round to 1st round picks. That's pretty significant. What do you think, CJ? Anything?
Yeah, 100% with Barron, 3rd to 4th round pick is where he was kind of projected last year, maybe more so in that 4th round, because I think if day 2 was kind of the consensus for him, he would have gone. But to come back, obviously win the Thorpe, be a top 1st round pick or whatever, great move for him. For Golden, let's remember, he only had about 900 receiving yards over his first 2 years. in college, right? He wasn't the number one wide receiver statistically at Houston for either of his seasons. So that kind of shows you the leap that he took the second half of the year, because he wasn't the number one guy the first half of the season for Texas. And really only after Oklahoma, when Isaiah Bond went down and we really saw the inconsistencies with his play down the stretch, did he really emerge, right? I believe it was the Georgia game in the SEC championship game where he went for about 160. And everybody's like, where's this been the entire? We've seen the glimpses. Texas has won the red zone routes with him pretty significantly the entire season. But to target him 14, 15 times, to utilize him as the surefire number one without any disputes, I think that's where you saw the ceiling really start to rise, and he built on that tremendously. But yeah, he wasn't on draft boards at all this time last year. The production wasn't there. And again, we knew that he was twitchy. We saw the short intermediate routes, but I don't think, again, anybody was expecting a 4.29 to come from him. So that alone should be the poster boy for Texas when it comes to development, production, what you can do at Texas when you transfer out of the portal and end up in Austin.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Volvo and Austin Underground. I want to thank Austin Underground, along with Gooder, Public Rec, and Bluebird Organizing for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank you all for tuning in. The great questions, the super chats. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime we go live, post content, whatever it may be. That way you don't miss anything. And speaking of not missing anything, Bobby, what do you have later today?
The recruiting breakdown coming up. CJ and Jerry are going to talk about some of these new offers as well as those official visits that we talked about too. Then we have the nighttime live stream. We'll be talking about that. Watching Texas men's basketball. It is a situation right now where I think, unless they turn it around, some bad things may happen on that side of the track. Texas baseball also plays tonight as well.
That's what I was going to say. You're not a glutton for punishment. You can also watch baseball on SEC Network, or SEC Network Plus, I guess. Be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member, become one very easily. Sign up using promo code OTFOG. You'll get a full year for just $49.95. Again, promo code OTFOG will get you that annual subscription for a little less than $50 at ontexasfootball.com. Well, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.